Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Sunday edition of Scum. Sorry about that. The weekend was a bit hellacious on my end. I'm Adam, the tech support slash guy they kind of need to get this shit show going.
I'm Alabaster, the unicorn, and I am mostly just in the passenger seat for what's about to happen.
So you're going to
Uh,
be there.
That I will.
I'm Greg. I'm just here for the ride.
Randall, and I was lucky enough to see the subjects of today's episode in action, and here to introduce said subject.
It's the Diopsid. He's our good guy power gamer that has quite a few stories to tell of various people he's played with over the years.
Why, hello there. I am the Diopsid, as they say. I have D&D'd for quite a long time, and boy, do I have a lot of stories. Some funny, some frustrating, but all of them, I really can't help but look back at them fondly.
In particular, there's one such figure in his stories that it's just kind of that right type of story where you can just enjoy it just because that person wasn't a that guy. He was more just, oh wow, this is going to be comical kind of guy.
Yes, the man in question will simply be known as Shane. Shane was an overall great guy. I mean, he was sometimes a little bit awkward, but he had a good heart. What he wasn't good at was doing anything remotely useful in tabletop games.
Oh no, so he was just kind of there.
Exactly.
Care to elaborate about these stories?
Okay. First, I'll start off with a story that actually predates my introduction to him, but I've heard so much from the others in this particular D&D group that I can't help but at least memorize what they told me.
Oh no, it's gonna be a legend. The legend of Shane.
Yes, the legacy of Shane and coming to the PS4 pretty soon.
Starring Dante from Devil. Was it also introducing Dante from Devil May Cry?
Oh.
Final boss is against the game controller. That's the reason I keep screwing up.
What are these alleged rumors?
Well, let's see. The first story would have to be the time he played a Dread Necromancer. I should mention that all these tales are Dungeons and Dragons 3.5.
So your standard
So,
Grognard fare. So keep that in mind.
now, a Dread Necromancer is an interesting class. Basically, you specialize in necromancy and not much else.
You're a necromancer and you cause dread. What else is there to say?
You're basically just a sorcerer that said, let's just focus on raising the dead and using them as monster bait.
Well,
Have a problem? Throw more skeletons at it.
the problem is that with Shane playing this is there's not much necromancy, but it was all quite dreadful.
Oh God.
Wait, so he didn't raise the dead?
Oh, he had a few, very few skeletons. He would usually take about a half hour to figure out what to do with any of them in any given turn, turning the entire game into a slog.
Wait, what? So, what were these types of things? Were they like morgues or greater shadows or like dragon
No,
skeleton?
they were just human warrior skeletons. The
Oh,
standard level 1 creatures that you wouldn't be able to find in an opening adventure.
Aren't warriors worse than fighters?
They're basically a fighter without the feat bonuses.
That is a move.
Now, the best part is that this campaign started at level 5, and by the time he was level 10 or so, he was still dragging around the weakest of the undead.
Wait, so he
and still
wasn't.
taking a half hour to decide what to do with them before they all just get simply killed in one hit and becomes legitimately surprised about it.
So he didn't even augment. Did he even know what augmenting undead was?
Uh, I mean, he just was unable to calculate what to do with these things. He was given more pieces to work with than the average player, and I guess it made his brain short circuit, which is why it took him so long to I move it 5 feet to the right and attack. Ah crap, it missed because it's a level 1 skeleton. Ah crap, it died in one hit. And in which case he would often say his catchphrase, seriously?
He had a catchphrase.
Yes, he seemed to not even realize that this was something he said a lot, but everyone else could recognize this pattern. Whenever anything went wrong in the games he was in, he would always exclaim it. And my rendition of it cannot do it any justice. He put every ounce of frustration in his soul into every time he said that.
He really meant it.
Seriously?
I'm just
And
30 minutes moving a
More like that.
skeleton warrior like 30 feet just to get yeeted by a bebolith.
Question:
What the fuck?
Is it true he was Canadian?
Yes, he was definitely Canadian.
Oh gosh, so I always seriously. Gosh, I'm trying to put a
Oh,
Canadian accent.
seriously, eh?
That's more of a Scottish Irish accent. Let's not try to be racist by trying to do a Canadian accent, which in reality is just like some fucking part of Ontario that no one goes to.
There was a short period of time where he actually had a few troll skeletons, which were a lot fancier than his usual crap.
Yeah, a troll
But
skeleton might
they
survive a
eventually,
hit.
yeah, but they eventually fell too.
And he
Oh,
didn't bother replacing them.
did
And he seemed to just not have been really creative with figuring out interesting uses for undead.
did he just like
Now,
summon them, or did he just kind of like forcibly have to murder like random peasants to get his shitty skeletons?
unfortunately, since as I said, this was mostly told secondhand, I do not know the complete details of how he acquired undead, other than he didn't do it very often. I should point out that this was an evil game with a lot of civilians being slaughtered on a regular basis, so I'm not sure why he couldn't come up with
To,
enough
to,
corpses for
to
a lot
give
of
our
stuff.
viewers an idea, our buddy the Diopsid currently is about what Shane's Dread Necromancer's level was. He is the proud owner of a boneyard right now. If you're
Which
wondering what
is
that is,
badass.
it is one of the nastiest undead forms you can throw at someone. There's a couple that are
is
worse, but it's up there.
isn't it literally just a bunch of bones all in a giant pile that attacks?
I think it also has the ability to just rip your skeleton out and turn you into jelly.
Yep.
Oh, it does. Nice.
Yeah, it pins
Fucking
them down
metal.
and then slurps out their skeleton.
Oh, I can't wait to see that in action. It's gonna be disgusting. Anyway, on to poor Necromancer who just takes 30 minutes to figure out how to move a martial character like 30 feet just to get crunched.
Yep. Well, in terms of other stories, there is one story in particular that I've always found really fun. It's just simply known as I've always specialized in the lawn sword.
Oh
I
no.
should point out that Dread Necromancers have the ability to be proficient in a single martial weapon that's chosen upon character creation.
Wait, why?
I have no clue. It's not like they can use it very well.
I mean,
Probably some goofy game design bullshit. Like when Monty Cook was thinking of the class, he was like, I don't know, just give him a fucking long sword, make him more wizard and magic.
that's kind of neat and all. Sometimes you maybe no, you never want to be out in combat. Not if you have Wizard HD.
For whatever reason, despite choosing this when the game started, he never told the rest of the group what his weapon was.
Well, he's a Dread Necromancer. I don't think it ever come up.
Well, it did one day.
Oh, oh yeah, because of the story. So how did it come up?
Well, it I should put some more info about the rest of the party here. At the time, there were only two other players. One was a friend of Shane that played half fiend null barbarian that had strength that was reaching the late 40s, early 50s at that point.
Oh, ooh.
Oh, it's a strength build.
Those are fun.
Yeah, Greg's currently doing one in my game. He's what's the Zach currently hanging out at? Like 40?
52.
50? Oh shit.
Wait, no. No, oh, my bad. That's if he is at the level. My bad. At level 7, he's at like 34.
He's
Well,
getting
that's
there.
he's
I was forgetting doing the planning out thing.
well, at least someone's eating their Wheaties. That's all I know.
Well, the third party member was a cleric known as Rowby the Sheath. He was Giz Yankee. But important thing is that the main job was that Mara killed dudes until she fell over and died, and then Rowby the Sheath resurrected her from the dead. She actually once took levels in Frenzied Berserker, and every
Oh,
time would
God.
usually lose them due to death.
That's good. No, that's good. That's literally the game telling that Mara not to ever take a level in that.
Yeah, they eventually gave up.
Good. If you're wondering why, viewers, Frenzied Berserker is one of those. If you ever had to rate the classes of D&D, it's the only one I would say is unrateable. Yeah, it's that disgusting. It does a lot of damage due to its very good rage boosts, but the moment combat ends, you then start marmalizing the party. It's not very
Yeah.
fun.
Well, to put this in perspective, in the story, the DM decided to try to play a prank on Mara's player by setting up a pretty obvious trap that, since he was always pretty intent on playing in character, Mara would immediately fall for.
Low end?
Basically, yep, a very fancily displayed magic sword in the middle of a dungeon. It was a long sword. Mar was about to grab it to add to her collection of weapons to turn everything into mush when Shane suddenly piped up and said, "I've always specialized in the long sword."
Come on, give me that log sword that has not a trap written on it. It's definitely not a trap.
I mean, I'm a level 10 Dread Necromancer, but I could totally use that longsword with my, 5 BAB? If you're wondering, a 5 BAB at level 10 means that you're not hitting much at that level.
Yeah, well, anyways, he decided to grab it before Mara could, and then what proceeded to happen was, well, his arms fell off. It was
I didn't know that part.
it was cursed.
Well, there goes his ability to cast any
Did he say
magic.
my question is, did he say seriously when that happened?
Of course.
I kind of
Oh,
get the
good.
feeling the answer is yes.
Wait, did Shane as the Necromancer actually cast spells that often?
I would guess seeing his undead died so frequently, there probably was many times where he didn't have any at all.
Oh god. Why even be a Dread Necromancer if you just don't drown the enemy and you're dead?
Yeah. Well, anyways, he eventually got around it by getting some weird DM-fied ghost hand thing so he could still cast spells.
In the interim, they were just dragging around an armless necromancer
Why did he get that?
with
Why
no
did he get that?
skeletons.
Why didn't he get that fixed? That's my question.
Because the rest of the party just didn't care. They actually put his arms in front of the fireplace of their little cottage.
Oh, that's great.
Brilliant.
Well, at some point, the DM got tired of waiting for him to do everything, so he unceremoniously killed the character off and told Shane, play something that isn't a Dread Necromancer. But we'll get to that later.
Oh no.
It gets
Apologies
worse,
for that.
doesn't it?
I don't know how you can get worse than a Dread Necromancer that doesn't use undead and doesn't cast magic and has no arms.
Oh, I could
Yeah.
think of ways.
Well, I think this time I'll probably move directions to other games because the replacement character was quite the doozy. Well,
Look how you use the word doozy.
in another campaign, same DM, same party, only this time I was in this group for real this time. It was originally supposed to be a Age of Worms module campaign, 1 through 20, originally published in Dragon Magazine.
Okay, zombie apocalypse setting.
A lot of creepy big cockroaches and worms, of course. And of course, Coos. Coos.
Yeah, well, anyways, the party was a bit odd. We had a monk named Fisto.
Seems to be
We
the
had
go-to.
yeah, we had a goblin beguiler female, played by Mara's player.
Oh.
Let's just say they didn't know anything about Age of Worms before this. They didn't realize that beguiler would be next to useless.
Ooh, yeah, that's...
Uh,
Mm.
I played a human healer, which is kind of like a cleric but worse in every way. I just heal stuff.
Well, I mean, if you have, is it, Book of Exalted Deeds, you can actually do a little more.
Yep. And finally, Shane decided to think with his brain a little bit and decided to play a Warforged Urban Druid.
That's him
Now,
thinking.
on paper, it doesn't seem like the worst option. While Warforges do get a penalty to wisdom, urban druids are primarily charisma based, unlike normal druids. And on top of that, urban druids can spontaneously cast a line of spells called Repair Wounds. I mean, Repair Damage, which is mostly used for healing objects and constructs, which a Warforged is. So basically, their idea was they'd be able to heal themselves with their spontaneous spells.
Yeah, but that only work if you regularly get into combat, though. I mean, that's kind of the point.
Yep. Another reason why he went with this character is because being a Warforged, he had a natural slam attack, so he didn't need to buy any weapons for himself. Same thing with armor. If you pick the
He,
right feat.
he just body slammed into people.
He just ran around naked, strangling people with his hands.
Now, urban druids also gain companions similar to druids, but instead it's from a select choice of mostly vermin and animated objects. He decided to make his backpack his urban companion.
Oh my
I kind of
gosh.
like that idea.
Oh my! That reminds me.
So,
That for some reason reminds me of Dora the Explorer.
Yeah, with the backpack. So the base idea doesn't sound too bad. I mean, picking Warforged on purpose just so you can use the very rarely used repair spells is a little weird, but you can do something with that.
see how Shane messes it up.
Yeah. Well, is say early on we ran into some sort of construct critter. I actually should probably correct myself and say that the campaign wasn't originally Age of Worms campaign setting. It just sort of evolved into that part way because the DM changing their minds.
Indecisive
Oh, so
GMs.
GM that decides to go on a completely different plot thread.
Yeah, because as he put it, it was less work than trying to come up with his own idea like he was originally planning.
Oh my god, how lazy.
I
Can
can't be fucked.
sympathize.
I can't be fucked to do it.
Now, we basically originally entered this set of ruins where outside of exploring around, there really wasn't much there until we reached near the end where we ran into these types of mechanical manticores.
That's kind of neat.
And yeah, and the fight started. Uh, Shane was managed to miss with every single one of his slam attacks consistently.
Oof. That is an oof
I'm
moment.
guessing he didn't put a lot of points into strength.
Not as much as he should have.
Or did
Um,
he use any of the spells to enhance his strength? Because I mean, don't urban druids still get that kind of stuff?
The Urban Druid spell list is extremely limited and specialized, so I at least can't detain him from saying there wasn't that many spells he could really do against such creatures. But there were still better options to choose from than walking up to them and trying to slam them in melee.
Just trying to pelvic thrust them to death while walking around buck ass naked.
No, we pretty much had to rely on Fisto the monk to deal most of the damage.
Oh.
When you're using your monk as your main source of damage, something
Oh,
went
yes.
hideously wrong with your group. Hideously wrong.
What are you talking about? The monk is the best class.
It's the funnest class. I've played one, but you need like 4 good stats, and even then, it's more of a 6-level dip.
Yep. Well, at one point in the fight, there was actually a hit that happened, but it wasn't from Shane. It was from like the 6th-strength beguiler goblin.
That feeling
Uh,
when the literal goblina does more physical damage than you.
uh, they threw a dagger in a desperate attempt.
It worked.
They got a crit, and even though they were constructs, the DM said, "You know what? Fine, it crits."
Fine. Crit.
You hit the big red button on it.
And so that was how the Goblin Beguiler, whose spells couldn't affect these things at all, managed to contribute more than an Urban Druid with higher strength and an actual melee attack.
Sounds like he just had a mixture of bad rolls and just not optimizing his strength.
Well, unfortunately, we didn't get to see much else from the Urban Druid outside of his backpack being killed in the most pathetic way I've ever seen a companion die ever.
Did he fucking smother it under his pillow on accident?
Dora, why are you doing this to me?
No, there was a rockfall trap, and I guess for whatever reason, even though we had enough time, he didn't move it out of the way as the rock slowly rolled on top of it and squished it.
Slowly rolled on it.
It literally got rocks fall on it.
Yeah,
Backpack.
and it
Why-
wasn't even actually, no one was panicking. It was like the most easily avoidable thing ever.
God, it's like the steamroller from Austin Powers.
Or alternatively, that idea that we came up with how to beat a dwarven defender, you just get like 5 or so goblins, like CR 1/8 goblins, and just slowly roll a rock at him.
Speaking of Dwarfen Defender,
He
I was
actually
going to
played
say,
one of
Oh
those.
god, he did that too.
yeah, let's just say he didn't, because he didn't do very well the first few sessions. He just had to replace his Urban and Druid with a Dwarven Defender.
Because what better way than to make a character that actually has some minor use be completely useless?
Now, this wasn't just any normal Dwarven Defender build. He took many feats for the purpose of lowering his attack roll to increase his AC further.
Oh no.
Took
He
combat
did combat
expertise.
expertise.
Yep.
Why?
And he wore a tower shield for another -2 to attack
Oh.
rolls.
no.
Oh, why? If you're wondering, people, the Dwarven Defender, at first glance, it looks pretty good. I mean, not amazing, but it looks good. Until you realize, for its bonuses to work, which in a way is a defensive form of the Barbarian's Rage, you have to stand still. And in D&D, the big thing that you kind of like to do is to move around. So yeah, once you set up your defensive stance, you ain't moving nowhere. Not unless you want to get the -2 strength penalty of being exhausted. Not exhausted, but tired.
Yeah, needless to say, he was just a lump. Usually things for larger enemies to just walk over and try to get to us squishies in the back, because none of the rest of us had particularly high AC. His idea is that he wanted to balance our lack of defense by having nothing but defense. But in return, he was not threatening at all because he always maxed his combat expertise to not hit anything.
What a smart boy.
Why didn't he play a knight?
I'm guessing he had no idea it even existed. I can't say this group was most well versed in the numerous splat books out there.
Yeah.
I think this
Plus,
guy is a smart boy.
maximizing AC on a class that gets like a +4 bonus to it already, and you're going to be wearing plate mail.
Though
Okay.
to be fair, at the same time, Urban Druid is a lot more obscure than the Knight is.
That's why I'm baffled why I didn't pick Knight.
I should also point out that because of his immense weight, slow movement, and the general weakness of everyone else in the party, except for the monk, he was really hard. It was really hard to get him to run away from things when we had to flee.
Oh
For
my
some reason,
God.
I'm just imagining him going womp 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 womp
I wish you had a bard so that you could just pay that bard 1 gold a day to just play tuba noises behind him.
Stop it!
Boom, boom,
I have a
boom,
glandular problem.
He probably fell through every wooden floor in the entire kingdom before it got infested with zombies. Don't worry, I'll get out of this cellar one day.
His greatest enemy, stairs.
Now, this campaign sort of eventually fizzled out, so there really wasn't that much more to say about this character.
Did
I
his
could,
inability to move kill anyone?
the only thing that killed is many people's interest in the game.
Oh, wow. So, here's the lesson, kids. Play a Dwarven Defender, you will single-handedly annihilate any interest in the DM's campaign. They're that radioactive.
Well, to be fair, there were other problems, such as when it switched to Age of Worms, the Beguiler was left useless.
Yeah, I would have
And
left.
as a healer, I couldn't do anything. It basically left to 3 characters that really couldn't do much offensively at all. And we had to rely on a monk of all things in order to do
When,
that kind of stuff.
when you're relying
Oh,
on your
no.
monk to do DPS, something went wrong with that party. That's something being Age of Worms in a party that seems to have been designed around social cues and stuff. Except Shane's Dwarven Defender. That's designed to just sit there and not do nothing.
Yeah. Anyways,
Not
I
do nothing. Not do nothing.
guess now would be time to move on to his next character. This is what happens when he plays actually a really good class and somehow still screws it up.
Oh god, no.
He decided to play a cleric, one of the best classes in the game.
Okay, so clerics, for those of you, I imagine most of you know, but in 3.5e, it's part of the three-headed hydra called the Codzilla. And I actually consider it the best class in D&D, but that's just because I'm of the opinion that the extra versatility you get of being a healer and a partial martial makes it a little
So,
better than wizard.
Christ Almighty, you do a cleric right, you can open up absolute cans of whoop ass.
You know, like only wizards are more horse shit, but that requires actually knowing the wizard spellbook and which items are really worth getting. So he's going to ruin this somehow. I am actually kind of dreading this because I've seen bad players with clerics and they're not very fun. Just ask the Scaly.
Yeah, well, he decided to play a gnome cleric. Fair enough, see nothing wrong with that. But then he decided to make his gnome venerable because
Oh
he really
no.
How
badly
old
wanted
is a
that.
venerable gnome? Because they're one of those races that can live longer than normal,
It's
right?
like 200 plus years, I think.
At the point we started at level 1, somehow he spent 200 years sitting on his butt being a level 1 cleric.
I mean, I kind of get the logic because of the wisdom boost, but the trick to that is just pick middle aged. Because the
You
thing
wanted
is,
the full boost.
venerable, it takes away enough of your physical stats that it's not really worth it.
So you're gonna basically become a Thomas Kane.
Hey, in Thomas Kane's defense, he was only middle aged so that he can get a bit better wisdom, which actually was pretty useful. Plus, he still surprisingly went first a lot in initiative, just because for some reason when I play a slow character, I tend to roll high.
Maybe you would go fast as a dwarven defender. Maybe it's something you need to try.
You know? No, that would only be during a one-off where everyone plays garbage. Like, I ain't playing that unless we're in a party with, like, a True Namer, a Drunken Master, and a Green Star Adept.
I'm taking notes here.
Yeah, well, anyways, as such, his cleric says, I think even his constitution was only like 10, which is really bad for a gnome.
Gnomes get a bonus to Constitution.
They do.
Ah,
And you really do want at least a slight con bonus as a cleric. Not like a massive one, since they have a decent hit die pool, but you do want at least a +1. Ideally +2, but if not, +1 will work very well.
I mean, there are other problems as well that also have to deal with the race he picked. As Gnome, he has a 20-foot move speed, which is really hard when you specialize in making mostly touch spells to heal your allies.
Also, let me guess, did he dump on full plate so he's moving at 10 feet now?
No, he did not, but instead that left him extremely vulnerable because his dexterity was practically non-existent. He just didn't have the strength score to actually wear full plate.
Oh my god. Which would have been solved if he just didn't do that.
I
Yep.
want to play wacky old guy.
I mean, that's always
Once ag-
fun, but not when it's making you very much impossible to fix other people's problems.
Once again, he was another character where when we had to run, which was actually a lot more frequent in this game, because we were sort of outlaws of sorts, that we usually had to pick him up and put him under our arm and start running with him because he's just going to get caught. Especially with his low con, he's going to get tired out really quickly compared to the rest of us.
Wait a minute. Wasn't there like one more thing that really made this idea bad? Like, wasn't it supposed to be one of those long burn games where it took
Yeah,
years?
the DM, off the record, noted that he was worried that his character would die of old age before the game was over.
Absolutely genius. He would
Mad
have
lad to the extreme.
flipped the table, going seriously. What? Look, I'm sorry, Shane, but Grimgold the gnome or whatever it was called, He died of old age. He's still.
Oh, he
Like
did.
He's dead
middle
in
of
his
the
cot.
middle of a major boss fight. Everything's all dramatic, intense. The gnome just suddenly drops dead due to old age.
Just drops dead due to stroke / heart attack / just literal senescence.
I've given up on life now.
I've lived the maximum age of a gnome, and I'm just gonna drop dead right here now.
Well, the campaign never got far enough for him to give up on life, but it did give up on sometimes doing anything at all for numerous rounds of a fight.
Oh god. I'm designed to help people, and I'm gonna just sit there with a thumb up my keister, being old.
Basically, he played a cleric like you would a healer with only access to miniatures handbook.
Oh
Oof.
god.
Like, you heal things. If there's no one to heal, you just sit there and do nothing for a turn.
Not even like a summon monster or a, you know,
No buffs, no summoning, no nothing.
or my favorite thing to do is spiritual weapon, which just allows you to sit there and let that thing hit. Actually, with that wisdom bonus, it'd actually be pretty useful for him.
No, Glitter Gold, he fell and he couldn't get up. That's why he did nothing. He was trying to get up because of his osteoporosis.
He was doing the dance of death, just like clutching onto a table.
I'd say nothing infuriated the rest of the party as much as him going, I skipped my turn, or something along those lines, while the rest of us were fighting with our characters' lives on the line.
Imagine if he actually did something like a bull strength or a cat's grace or, you know, a spiritual weapon or something.
Anything.
Literally anything.
Heal.
I think even obscuring mist would help more.
Oh no.
It'd be
This eerily
something.
reminded me of another bard who did. This reminded me of a bard who did nothing.
We already told
No,
a story.
the scaly at the very least shot his bow.
Speaking of bows,
Oh god, no.
Shane was very fond of crossbows for many of his characters. I mean,
Why?
a lot of his characters lacked a strength score, so the lack of needing one to use a crossbow was pretty useful to him, especially seeing as it was a simple weapon and thus almost any class could use it.
Yeah, but that's like something you only use for as a caster. To give you an idea, I had a necromancer named Georgios. He had a crossbow, but he didn't use it super often unless he was almost out of spells or just in that situation, that was his only option because of how the encounter worked.
Yeah, well, no one could use the crossbows quite as much as his artificer.
You mean the class that's literally designed around making wondrous items?
Yeah. Or in his case, wondrous item singular.
Oh no. Let me guess, he used that one creation item to make a freaking crossbow.
Yes, it was a crossbow with a slightly minor benefit over normal crossbows that I've long since forgotten, but it was not enough for it to
To
make a
not suck?
character. Yeah,
So he made a
I should point out that
+1 crossbow.
artificers are actually an extremely powerful class, on par with the big three from Core. If you know what you're doing, you need to have a bit of imagination, but apparently Shane wasn't one of those people. Just like when he was a dread necromancer, no imagination, and so he just got a blueprint as a loot one time for a crossbow, and he made it, and then not much else outside of using said crossbow.
Why did he even bother to play an artificier if he was just gonna play a shooty man?
Well, one minor thing I should point about it that his character's name was something like Nicholas. It was some sort of Santa Claus related pun
Oh god.
because he makes the items for all the little children, or in this case, instead, chain smoking camels and mustached psychics. That's for another day, probably.
But wait, if he only made one item, doesn't that mean he failed his job as Sinterklaas?
Yeah, because he was constantly, almost every session, making a joke. Hey, my name is Nicholas. I make items. I'm like Santa Claus. That everyone just started calling him Steve, including the
Oh my
DMs.
god.
Oh man, that feeling when everyone is done with you. I think he
So
only made that character just for the pun.
yeah, sometime later when he said, "I know I'm going to legally change my character's name to Steve," that we then tried to call him a completely different name besides that.
Oh god.
I would have just
Because
called him
Larry.
Jimmy afterwards. Yeah, whatever, Jimmy.
yeah, that character, there really isn't that much to say about it. Because unfortunately, the campaign ended far too soon.
Seems to be a bit of a running theme. So is Shane cursed or something in that respect?
No, it's just that from my personal experience, there are very few D&D campaigns that ever reached their definitive conclusion.
Oh yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah.
Kind
It's
of a
it's
shame when it doesn't when it happens, but it happens.
yeah. Well, now that we got all of the minor trash out of the way,
Oh, this is minor, everyone.
okay. As I mentioned, his Dread Necromancer was killed off by the DM, and thus he had to roll up a new character.
Oh boy.
Now, sometime before I personally got to see this character, I joined this campaign. I was a blackguard,
Ooh.
which it isn't a very good class, but that'll be fixed later.
Yeah, for
Basically,
those wondering, blackguards, they have a very the bonuses you get are not worth taking in the class. The biggest problem is the replacements for the paladin abilities just they don't scale. They don't take paladin levels with it. So it's not really recommended. It's often pushed as the how you take a fallen paladin idea, but really there's other options like Greyguard or Bone Knight that are way better.
yeah, well, anyways, since the character's Mara the Knoll was focused on killing things in one hit, and Robbie the Sheaf was bounced around patching up the wounds that Mara received, I decided to be the AC monster of the party.
So the not Dwarven defender.
Yes, because I actually have an offensive edge of sorts. Now, I just wanted that at this time, Shane was away due to work reasons, so it wasn't until well, weeks into me playing this that he finally joined, and this was actually technically the first time I met him. And he got to show off his character, which was, well, a halfling rogue that at that point was faithful polymorphed into a rabbit.
What?
Oh.
Baleful polymorphed into a rabbit, you say?
Yes, the DM ruled that he could keep it and he won't have to roll the will saves because he really badly wanted the extra dex. But the problem is, as a tiny sized creature with a massive strength penalty, and he used daggers,
Oh
he
god,
barely did anything at all.
he did 1 damage each time. Technically, he should be doing negative damage actually with the minuses applied.
He sucked so much that his tax actually healed the enemy.
Wow,
He
yeah,
somehow
yeah, thank you, man. Thank you, man. You knocked that. My chin's been feeling out of place for years. Thanks, man.
he tends to stab somebody and ends up suturing their wounds.
Well, I think I might have mentioned this already, but this character's name was Klein. Klein was, well, I guess I should best say it how another player put it. Mara the Knoll, she can kill anything in a single hit with her great axe. Meet Robbie the Sheep, he can heal any wounds immediately and even raise the dead. Meet Dorian Guzzleblame, who can tank any hit, even from a pit fiend. And meet Klein, he's there too.
He's there too. Like, I don't even get the obsession with the dex there. What's stuck in his brain that he thought doing 1 point of damage each time was the best option?
Yeah, it was also compared to a Marvel team up of the Incredible Hulk, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and the Dazzler.
That's an insult to the Dazzler. This would be like
More
you
like
got
Taste Pot Pete.
This would be like if you got Superman, Wonder Woman, and then you got I'm trying to think who would be. Then you got Firestorm, and then you got not even the Wonder Twins, like the original take of the Wonder Kids with Wendy, Marvin, and frickin' Wonder Dog.
God. Ooh.
And that's still, I think, a bit of an insult because they still have very garbage level detective abilities. So outside of
Yeah,
combat, where he did 1 damage per 4 hits, did he do anything while in rabbit form?
well, not only I got to see. Well, there was that time he almost died, and that other time he almost died. This is a pattern.
Sorry to say, Klein, that you have been stepped on by the storm giant. He did not notice you were there.
I believe at one point Mara decided to hold on to him by stuffing him into her cleavage because he kept almost dying constantly.
Oh my god.
The rabbit cleavage cannon. She flexes and the rabbit just flies out.
At that point, I think that would be the only time Klein would do more
So
damage.
what you're saying is she had the most common superpower?
Well, the player did said she had to don't quit. That's his phrase, not mine.
Oh,
A catchphrase?
that feeling when the boobs of a character are more useful than your character. I don't even know how to feel about this.
Do we even feel anything about this?
I just feel like I'm there, like just here.
Yeah. Well, at some point, I began to realize that Blackguard was pretty terrible. So, the DM allowed me to refluff into a pretty amazing class, one of my personal favorite prestige classes, known as the Bone Knight from the Eberron campaign setting. Now, it allowed me to increase my tankiness quite a bit because the class grants you many immunities that undead have, which is to a large chunk of most stats effects and even critical hits, while still having the advantages of being a living creature still.
Which is admittedly quite nice. I also do seem to recall you get a better version of the assassin's death attack, too.
Yes, once a day you can stab someone. They make a fort save based off of your charisma, which should be high, and if they fail, they just die.
I do also think you also get some minor necromancy ability. I mean, it's nothing home to write about, but
Yes, but
still.
the things you can create, which are a very setting specific type of intelligent zombies and skeletons, while they aren't good for combat, I actually use them quite a bit for things like gathering loot. I usually kept them in a portable hole with a card table and some cards.
Sounds like my necromancer Georgios. He didn't have many undead, but he used them as porters.
Yep. I find out that at the same time, Shane realized that he wanted to change his classes too because he felt that Klein wasn't doing anything.
Okay, so he realized his character was a trash fire.
Now, the DM told him that if he did this, he could no longer be a rabbit, which he said was fine. He'd be back to the halfling he originally was. But he went from being a rogue to being what is a worse rogue, the ninja class.
I mean, ninjas
Oh,
aren't bad, but why would you ever pick that?
I guess he liked that it had a few supernatural abilities that were all shadowy and edgy and probably would be at home on Naruto.
I mean, at that point, you might as well just pick the straight up assassin.
Did he ask for a magical headband from the GM?
No, thankfully.
I don't know how you can logically go from rogue to ninja and go, yeah, this is good.
For those who aren't complete autists, why are you here? And two, ninja is a terrible class in 3.5. It's kind of like a rogue fighter, but doesn't really. It's worse than both of them.
For
Kind of a
example,
joke.
I don't remember. I don't think the ninja gets sneak attack dice. Not many.
It gets a variant called Sudden Strike, which only
Oh,
works on surprise rounds.
so they get a
Instead of
worse
all,
sneak attack. Ugh.
yeah.
What else do you not get that I'm thinking of? I imagine you use magic device, which, ooh. If you're wondering, use magic device is the most broken skill you can get because if you actually cheese it hard enough, you can cast ninth
Ijutsu,
level spells as a 10th level character.
if you do it right, also Ijutsu focus is also very broken too.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah,
more
but ninjas
useful
don't
in
get that.
yeah, it's more useful if you're playing like a factotum or something.
Yeah. Well, needless to say, his what little combat he got to do while in ninja form was somehow even less spectacular than when he was in rogue.
Probably because at least as a rabbit he was guaranteed to hit.
I believe once again he spent most of it as being unconscious.
How did he play that? Did he just like wade into combat like Mara, like a dummy?
Sometimes just a straight AoE would knock him to the point where he could barely fight anymore.
Did he not wear armor? Did he not have what was his health like? Did he just keep it low on purpose?
I guess he just didn't focus much on Constitution.
I'm still baffled on how you can die so friggin' much.
Yes, I should point out that Klein has, in not only that group, but many groups to follow, including the one I'm in with these guys, been a butt of jokes of sorts. He is the example of a character just being completely useless. Klein, he was there too. But all good things must come to an end, and at one point so did Klein's life.
Oh, for permanently then.
Yeah, unlike what most people would expect, it wasn't even during combat or even something like a trap, or at least a trap in the traditional sense.
Oh God, so Klein died of, I don't know, getting a paper cut from the mailman.
Well, one day the DM decided to have some fun and let us come across a deck of many things. The Ender of Campaign.
Oh man. So which variant of death did he get? Did he get the void one where where the soul goes in the void, or did he have to fight the Grim Reaper?
Well, the point is that at first
But
he
he didn't
was.
get just trap beneath the earth. What did he get trap beneath the earth?
Oh yeah, that's another card.
I should point out that at first he was hesitant to draw from it, but I should point out him and this particular DM were always at odds with each other. They were always at it, and basically he goaded him into drawing 3 cards at once. Where are you, chicken?
I mean, if I was the DM and I had to watch as a guy drag down everyone else, I'd probably get a little cross too.
Yeah, well, needless to say, he eventually drew 3 cards. In the order of things that happened, first, his intelligence was permanently dropped by 2. Second,
Seems fair.
all of his items were immediately destroyed.
Seems fair.
And 3, he drew the void.
Seems fair.
So here's what I envision happen. So this dumb halfling just picks the 3 cards. He then just immediately shrugs out and dies as everything on him just turns into spaghetti. He just drops dead and falls over from a massive stroke and just all of his clothing and items just turn into spaghetti.
So, just so I understand this correctly, the void is literally just "fuck you, you're dead."
It's
And this
instant
is
death.
correct.
It is instantly sent to into a dimension where it is a nightmare and a half to drag the soul back from.
I'm not
Looks
even
like
sure if
we're
it's
going
possible.
to the shadow dimension.
It's to give you an idea. It's actually easier to go down into the hells and fight some of the devil lords to get a person's soul back than it is to get to the void and get that soul back.
It requires 2 wishes worth to get this reversed.
No,
Literally
that super
easier to go
rare
down to
ultra
hell.
EXP spending spell.
Yes.
Literally easier to go down in hell and get a soul back that way. I imagine the party did not really care about getting Klein back.
Let's just say we immediately were disappointed that his items were destroyed.
You went to the default. Oh, well, let's loot his corpse. Oh, he lost all his items.
Well, I should point out that there was enough game left for him to play one more character before, and he managed to do a little bit of a turnaround from all of his previous stories.
Let me guess, he only played that character one session, so that's why.
Yes, he played a wizard that I highly suspect he went through some sort of online guide. He decided to go Archmage and focus heavily on meta magic
Why
feats.
did he go Archmage? I mean, it's not a bad option, but there's way better wizard PRCs. Was this during the time where it was one of your few good options because of the Dungeon Master's Guide?
No, all this was post 3.5. It was still 4E. That was current.
Any
So
reason why you didn't pick any of the other options that are actually better?
same reason why he didn't pick a knight instead of dwarven defender. He probably just didn't realize there was.
Existed. What? That exists?
So he picks Urban Druid, but doesn't know about things like the Initiate of the Sevenfold Veil, which is a very good prestige class, by the way, viewers, for those who really like prismatic spells.
Well, there was one thing I could definitely say about the wizard. He seemed to have specialized in evocation.
Interesting choice.
Very
I should
bog
point out
standard.
I find that despite what many would think, evocation is probably one of the weakest schools to focus on.
Yeah,
Especially,
honestly, Conjuring is a lot better.
I mean, if you're going to play an evocation specialist, just play a war mage.
yeah, but I should point out what eventually happened is that Shane just stopped caring about the campaign because for the arc villain that we ran into the same session that the wizard was introduced, Shane's Dread Necromancer was brought back under DM control, and it got him pretty angry.
But he hasn't played that thing for like a year.
Yeah, well, let's say that was the very last session of that campaign. We were level 18.
Literally lost his temper because a character that he played terribly was brought back. Oof.
Now, all these previous stories were from a perspective as a fellow player, but now I need to get into some different angles. First is when he was a player in a campaign of my own making.
Oh, God.
This should be funny.
Funny or fun?
More the latter than the former.
Now, this campaign was something I had been cooking for a couple of years and had been wanting to run for a while. So of course I invited all of my D&D friends, including Shane, to enter this. It was a campaign that was based off of guess sort of obscure old Game Boy RPG that I grew up with. and I added a few of the races from that game and a few other games in the series as playable races. One of which was the Esper.
Is that Final Fantasy Legends that you're talking about?
Yes, Final Fantasy Legend 2. In the original English release, they were referred to as mutants, but I'd prefer
Marvel
the.
try and sue them.
Probably.
Yes, well, anyways, the Esper I mostly designed to every morning you basically roll on a table and you'll get a few spell like abilities, a couple level 0 or level 1 spells that you can use for the day.
Sounds pretty neat.
Yep, on top of bonus to charisma with to encourage going into a spontaneous caster of sorts.
So how did
Now
he
he
screw
just
this up?
he definitely wanted to try out one of my races, so he picked Esper.
Mhm.
And he decided for his class to pick Savant, bizarre class from the same book as Urban Druid.
You just like that book, or
Wait,
Yep.
they're
Well,
from Dragon Compendium, right?
Volume
yep.
1 of one volume.
Oh. Imagine if they made a volume 2 which expanded things like the Jester. I think that was in there.
The Jester is
Yes.
a great class.
Jester. There's also the Shire, which is where you negotiate with outsiders to get your spells.
Yep, and the Death Master.
Oh yeah, the Deathmaster's like one of those really cool. I think it's more fun than the Dread Necromancer.
Yeah, but of all the classes to pick for the book, he had to pick the Savant. It is a weird jack of all trades class. If there's one good thing I can say about it, is that it gets every skill in the game as a class skill. Yes, even those obscure ones.
The
he gets
only
jutsu
problem,
focus? Wait, he gets jutsu focus?
It gets all the skills,
Including those weird psionic ones like auto hypnosis.
even the ones no one remembers, like knowledge computer literacy.
Oh yeah, that's from Greyhawk 2000, isn't it?
Yeah.
But why would you want to play one of those? The Factotum, from what I remember, is even better.
or if you're able to do a few dips in Rogue or Bard, go with Chameleon. Then you're playing a really good prestige class.
Yep. For those unaware, the Savant gets a little bit of everything. Gets a handful of bonus feats like a fighter, only they can be any feat. They get arcane spells level 1 through 4 at level 5, and get divine spells also level 1 through 4 at level 10.
Kind of like a
And
paladin meets a ranger in a way.
and they get a little bit of sneak attack too. But in the end, they just end up being terrible at everything because they get so little of it.
To give you an idea, the reason I say, if I remember right, it sounds like a worse factotum. The beauty about a factotum is you can focus on what you want to specialize in that day. Well, a savant just kind of randomly gets little gubbins here and there that they just, have to deal with.
Its balance is also extremely baffling. It picks some of the most useless and/or situational spells from the core book to choose from, and also some oddities like getting Cure Light Wounds and Cure Moderate Wounds, but not Cure Serious and Cure Critical.
Yeah, to think that you'd at least get the secure serious to make you at least viable there.
Yep. Well, anyways, he decided to go with that race class combo. I should point out that the charisma bonus from the Esper race does nothing for this class.
Yeah, because from what I understand, savant isn't it spellcasting like a mix of int and whiz?
Yes.
Oh wow, he should have. I'm struggling to form words.
Yes, and remember, I'm the guy that was in charge of this game, so I had to deal with his stuff in a very different way from usual. Instead of laughing on it, I had to constantly worry about trying to balance him with the rest of the party. I had to keep throwing small boons in his direction. At one point, I just realized that he couldn't get the hint, so I think I introduced item like the Amulet of the Esper Savant.
You had to put his
Ooh.
name on his underpants.
Pretty much.
Jesus Christ.
I think if we took any longer,
The amulet of
I
shame,
would.
please don't suck so much.
Literally, he on top of it, there's a note from the god of this entire realm, just saying, "To whoever may concern, that means you, Shane. For the love of all that is holy, put this upon your body, so that you can actually be worth something to this team. I will be very angry if you do not. Love, DM."
I believe among other things, it added all of the Esper's spell-like abilities as possible spells they can prepare on their spell lists, and also added numerous other spells to both their arcane and divine spells.
I wouldn't have been shocked if he's just like, this is clearly for Mars player who's now playing like some gnome druid or something.
They were actually playing a blind cleric.
I'm okay with this.
Wait, is that like a class or like an actual just he's blind and a cleric?
It was basically supposed to be like a 12-year-old girl who was blind because her eyeballs were stolen by her lich uncle or something weird like that.
Okay, that's a little bit fan fictiony, but I can work with this.
No.
They'd probably just give it to my character, the drunken dwarf fighter who could only do plink damage. Because it was my first character and I didn't understand how things work.
Yeah, at least I threw a whole bunch of loot your way too, Randall. I was one of those people DMs like to custom make loot, especially for the players. I know it's a little bit.
The probability a rocket launcher might show up again at some point in a future game.
That could be in
Yeah.
its own episode, just us talking about some cool ideas we've had as DMs. Might want to look into that one day.
Yep. I have to say that his character, like many before, just really didn't contribute much of anything. I think he barely even made the skill checks that the class was mostly based around.
How did he screw that up?
He doesn't.
And well, in the end, he had to leave the game for work-related reasons. The same reasons why he was initially absent from the campaign where he was Klein when I first joined. Because it was sort of a annual thing.
I imagine there wasn't much of a change when he was gone than when he was there.
Well, I believe it was after that Randall joined in, as well as another player. Since there was actually two players that left. One of them was the DM from the game where he was Klein because he missed Shane because he couldn't mess with him constantly.
That's kind of pathetic, but okay. Whatever floats your boat, man.
Yeah. So that's the end to that hill. However, there's something much more horrifying than being the DM for Shane, and that is having Shane be the DM himself.
Oh no.
I'm actually struggling to see how that would work since it took him 30 minutes to figure out how to move two skeleton warriors.
How much railroad choo choo was there?
Quite a bit. It's like we were on the Shane Express. Keep your hands and arms inside at all times, or whatever. Let's see. The setting was sort of ancient Greek or Roman setting of sorts. Not that it mattered much since it didn't come up too often. And we were immediately thrown into a game as level 3 characters that were forced by background to be part of this guild of vagueness.
Guild of Vagueness. What? So not even Shane knew what they did?
It's kind of all over the place what we were supposed to be. It was supposed to be like an adventures guild. Did he watch too much anime or something? I have no clue. But the point is that there was a significantly higher level NPC in charge, and he pretty much could boss us around in what we had to do.
Oh, that's the worst way to do things.
Yep. Let's see. Well,
Now, out of curiosity, was this character also a DM insert by any?
he seemed to think that we would love this character from the way he worded it.
Oh,
No,
you're saying
because-
he was trying. He was trying at the very least.
Yep. Well, I guess I should point the party composition because the players one in particular sort of shaped how the game ended up. Well, I myself played a human Duskblade, which is a pretty nifty little class that is a sword mage of sorts. You combine casting with stabbing someone with a weapon.
I consider it kind of the only real Gish build. It's not like the traditional having all levels of spells and full BAB, but I consider it the kind of the better option.
Yep, the class is often referred to as Gishinikan. Then we had a Kobold Bard.
Okay.
Yes, he was mostly the buffer and also usually threw stat spells at people like Grease. And then we had a Kobold Sorcerer. So many kobolds.
Oh my lord.
Oh no. The
They
the curse of the scaly returns preemptively.
they liked Fireball, even if they couldn't remember that they weren't high enough level to learn it yet.
What?
Oh, this guy.
I shall tell his tale some other time, possibly. And then finally, there was said DM that I mentioned before, who really liked messing with Shane. He seemed to have formulated his player character to be as infuriating to Shane as possible.
What a dick.
That's actually really sad, by the way. Like, no offense to that guy, but that is sad.
Yeah. He played a female human druid with a camel animal companion he named Bob Dole.
Oh gosh.
I'll give him credit. I actually dig that name.
Yeah, nothing like naming your animal companion after a failed presidential candidate.
I mean, at least he didn't name it William Jennings Bryan.
Or when even
Or Michael
less
Dukakis.
original, I called it Joe.
I wish that he would have gone for a bird, so he would have named it Dan Quail.
At least he didn't name it like Adlai Stevenson.
I should point out that despite him making this character just to annoy Shane, that this character was also one of the few legitimately funny parts of the campaign and was very memorable. It was like the only bright spots. Like, yeah, I don't know if I want to play Shane's game. Wait, the guy that plays the druid with the camel's gonna be there. I want to see what he does next.
That feeling when you make a game so awful that the only joy you feel is a person intentionally taking the piss out of the DM.
Yeah, well, this person's main gimmick is that he kept very heavily implied that his druid was in an illicit relationship with their camel.
Oh my god.
So white girls fuck camels.
Yeah, well, basically by immediately declaring, usually when Shane was rambling in character, I make out with my camel.
I don't know whether or not to wish this person to be crucified in fire or to give them a medal.
I shall do both.
Because to give you an idea, this is the setting where you have to deal with a very obnoxious DMPC. So, on the one hand, you're not feeling dead inside.
On the other hand, you're feeling kind of squicked out inside.
The urge to murder rises.
Significantly.
Yeah, well, anyways, our first mission, we were supposed to check out some potential necromancy going on. Yes, it all comes back to necromancy, apparently.
I hope the
Begins
leader.
and ends. It's time is a flat circle. Time is a flat circle.
I was just hoping that it's this armless necromancer just going, seriously, now will be the time that the ritual will be complete and I will have arms again.
Well, eventually we just fought some crappy skeletons. The only highlight of that fight, other than being our first mission, is that the player of the Kobold Sorcerer kept trying to negotiate with the mindless skeletons.
Oh, God.
Too embarrassing.
We then entered some sort of musty library where there. I should point out that Jane was probably the worst at describing the setting to make it seem more alive. It was just, oh yeah, there's a spider, a big one. We should fight it.
Why do I
And
want to fight a
then
spider, though?
Because he's an asshole, Spider. That's why.
And the fight, and let's see, outside of the same sorcerer from before getting pinned underneath a fallen bookshelf by trying to climb it, the fight ended pretty quickly.
I kind of enjoy that you're just walking through a nondescript library that literally has no details, and then all of a sudden, Spider just crawls down from the ceiling, and you just get this urge to marmalize it. And
It's
you
just
you
coming
your
to say hi. Ah!
and the best part is you were told to feel this way. It's not like the spider chooses to be an asshole by spitting venom at you or
Well,
something.
if I'm right, it was trying to get at the camel, and since the camel was the only good thing of the campaign, we decided to save the camel.
That's just Shane being petty and it's like, I'm gonna get rid of this camel. How dare you make fun of me with this camel somehow?
I need to point out that the second mission after this, I can't even remember how it was resolved. That's how unmemorable it was.
Oh, fuck me.
Is that we were forced into some sort of weird D&D adventure version of the Olympic Games,
Oh boy.
where we had to form teams, which was just our party, of course. I have to point out that we were pretty much just forced to enter this.
Because who doesn't like being forced into a tournament that no one cares about for no
I mean,
reason?
everyone's watching anime, right?
This is literally Shane pulling out. So what's popular in shonen anime? Oh yeah, tournament arcs.
Yeah. Well, let's see. The first part was us going through a labyrinth complete with Minotaur. Well, we ran into said Minotaur, and what happened is that we completely destroyed his encounter by the bard constantly casting grease. And when the grease wore off, he'd cast another grease in the exact same spot, causing him to fall over again.
Was he too stupid to just crawl out of the butter?
I should point out, because the Minotaur was also blocking the only hallway in the area, we were constantly leaping over him during the entire fight, including the camel, where it somehow managed to gracefully jump over the Minotaur.
All the while, the Minotaur is confusedly and angrily mooing.
Honestly, if I was that Minotaur, I'd be like, you know what? Fuck it. I ain't getting paid enough to murder people in this maze.
With despair in his voice, he said, "You turned my Minotaur encounter into a tap dancing cow."
Nice.
I should point out, you laugh now, but he realized he thought that the way he put it was so funny, he continued to repeat it to the point that it stopped being funny.
Oh, I hate when people do that. It's just like, you're gonna destroy the joke.
Oh, no, repeating it 1,000 times only makes it funnier.
The best example of this that you can actually look at yourself, viewers, if for some reason you're watching this still, I don't know why. Go to Darkside Phil. There is a joke he makes about hot dogs.
Oh, beef, ballpark beef, right? Oh God.
That was one of the few times he actually crafted a fairly effective joke. He then proceeded to ruin it by then repeating it about, I don't know, 20 times, maybe 30. See, a joke loses its impact the more you say it, especially over the course of time, to the point where it becomes eventually what is called non-MIDI, where you smile a little less every time it's said.
Well, anyways, we managed to get out this maze, and we then had an arena-style combat. I guess more closer to the shonen anime that everyone's mentioned.
I'm really
Not much
curious on what
happened
anime he watched.
other than us once again steamrolling and everything. This is a trend from what little there was of the campaign. Shane, as the DM, his encounters weren't that much different from his playable characters.
Oh God.
You mean they were
Only-
terrible and they failed?
The difference is that it was the entirety of the opposition in this game.
I mean, to give you an idea, there's a reason why the monster manual exists. I mean, I'm gonna tell you right now, one of the best ways to make a decent but unique boss is to just take something from the monster manual or something that's like from the base, and then just tweak it a little bit. Giant snake, that's cool and all, but give them electrical stunning glands a la the electric eel, and you got something cool.
Yes, I mean, modifying monsters is stupidly easy. The D20 system was made in such a way that homebrewing and modding things is really easy to do.
Need a giant eagle to be tougher because your party's a little higher level? Just have DR5 to anything but adamantine.
Knowing Shane, his attempt to homebrew something to be more powerful would end up making it even worse.
This is a man who thought ninja was better than rogue.
For some reason, I get this distinct impression. It was not the. It was that if you had any challenge at all during the fight, it was on something that he probably didn't think at all about.
Speaking of which, the
Oh,
very
fuck me.
final mission of this campaign,
Oh God! Wow, I was right.
we were told to gather some nuts or fruits of some sort in a forest. Yeah, really exciting
What is
stuff.
this? A fucking RPG video game?
Well, there's an adventurer guild.
Yeah, but like that's a level 1 sort of adventure. Hey, you wouldn't mind? I'm the apothecary. Do you think you can get some of the stuff in the mountains? You got to be careful though. There's a couple of giant eagles out there you got to watch out for.
I should point out that at this point, all of the players behind the scenes, we all agreed that we were only playing this to eventually overthrow Shane's DMPC of sorts.
Amazing.
Well, like our in character mutual hatred of this guild master that bossed us around. We planned that if it's going to continue, we're going to eventually get strong enough to overthrow him. All
Uh,
of the players were in on this. There was no one opposed to this.
my question is though, would Shane cheat and just arbitrarily make him win?
You heard me talk about the encounters so far in this game. The answer would be no.
He couldn't even if he tried.
He tries cheating and he actually makes the DMPC worse each time. I gave him 80 dex. How come it's not working? Because he also didn't up his strength from 10.
Also, there's a limit to how. Yeah, I gave him plus 20 armor. What? No, that doesn't exist.
Yep. Well, apparently he was really looking forward to us doing this because he apparently spent last couple weeks, there's sort of a break between games, planning up this amazing boss for us to fight, some sort of modified bear. Well, let's see, if I remember how things went, when the battle started, it got last on initiative.
That doesn't help.
Everyone attacked it. It got a single hit off against the camel, and then before it can make a second move, it was completely jobbed.
Wow, that's
Jane on this. I'm just imagine him just staring at the write up for the stats for a bear, like and this goes on for hours, and then he's like, I've got it. 2 strength.
strength.
Oh god, and I thought the champion fight it was let down.
To give you an idea, 2 of the examples in the group that I've gamed with in terms of big, bad, customized boss being chomped like a little girl, Greg managed to make kind of the example of the strength build, a 100 plus strength epic level champion of Grummish that, due to a combination of reducing his already low ent to 0 due to stat debuffing, whelms, and just some frankly amazingly bullshit level rolls in terms of me hitting it, effectively rendered the guy dead, mindless, and his own item broken. It took 4 degrees of Fiat to make him exist long enough to actually land a hit, and he rolled a 1 and just hit the fucking island.
He blew himself up. He blew himself and the island up.
The other example would be the time that I'll give the party this. They were very lucky and managed to use a nice mixture of stealth and evasion to break into the little research lab of the necromancer that they were going to face.
In all fairness to you, we at least some of us actually suffered in that fight.
Yeah, but that's because I gave him 3 forms just because I knew I needed at least another form.
I remember how you were like, you said second form, bitches, because of how quickly
Because his
you
first form just instantly evaporated. It was glorious.
Oh, don't forget the Tony the Tiger incident.
Oh yeah, where
Where
you built a rage build and then just calm emotions.
Billy Mays or Billy Mays and a single knockout dart.
I mean, this is just something you have to prepare for as a DM.
And honestly,
As
my point of view, it's hilarious whenever this thing that you designed just instantly gets chumped.
well, probably my favorite story with you about things not going horrible, things not going according to plan is obviously the disaster at Fort Schmerzen, which we've covered in a previous video.
It's a nice little less than 10 minutes videos. In short, a full Henderson happened. It was glorious.
Yep. Well, anyways, this would almost be the end to the story, but there is something much, much worse that happened after this fight. Well, after we gathered what we needed to, we planned to probably sell the bear corpse for some stuff. And on the way back to town, the Shane rolled on the encounter table, and we ended up running into 1d3 boards, which ended up being 2. What happened is the single most tedious and unfun fight I've ever had in a D&D game.
How tedious are we talking?
Everyone was rolling under a 4 on all of their attack rolls.
Oh wow, that sounds like Al and I. That sounds like Al and I when we were playing in Greg's Weeaboo game in 5e.
On top of that, the pigs even got in.
They
So
crit it, didn't they?
we were on the losing side for most of the fight.
Slowly getting owned by a pair of pigs.
I should point out that I know the game enough that Shane was not fudging anything. In fact, he seemed dressed over this. That his big fancy boss who was taking a few hits, and the first fight we ever struggle with is just a random encounter from a table.
Why do I get this? Why do I get this distinct impression? And that if someone had to maybe make meme about this, someone would put it Virgin Bear Chad Boar.
So I might actually make that as some fan art eventually. You'll see it one day, people. Probably in like 8 years from now.
I mean, it was pretty tough, and most of us were almost dead. Some even in the negatives, but eventually stabilized.
Oh my god.
But we finally beat the boars about 2 real-time hours later.
Oh my god, a fight that lasted two full hours? How many turns did that last?
Too many.
Too many.
To give you an idea, this is what killed the campaign. We didn't even care about our revenge against the Guildmaster anymore. It's just, yeah, we're done.
I want to get off Porky Pig's wild ride.
And honestly, that is all I have for stories of Shane. However, I would like to make a very special note, an epilogue of sorts that I heard from one of the people that was in that D&D group. At some point, he entered another 3.5 game that I was not in. It was a real life game, and he ended up playing a factotum and ended up not being garbage.
What?
Wait, he actually was competent for once in his miserable life?
Yeah, he actually contributed to the campaign consistently.
Getting
Sure, this was
better?
Shane.
I'm kind of surprised because Factotum, you have to kind of know what to focus on that day. It doesn't seem like a class you'd do well in.
Well, I can guarantee that the person who's telling this would not lie about this.
Huh.
Damn. That even the worst players can improve.
That's kind of a nice thing, isn't it?
He never improved.
Oh god, yeah.
I'm gonna censor that, god damn it.
Fuck. Sorry.
GG. So after that censoring, seriously, thanks Diopsid for coming on here. If you ever
Yeah.
feel like talking about some of the other disasters you gamed with, or just weirdos,
Yep.
Let's get
Well,
off. Let's
let's
talk
all final
everybody
note.
while
I'd
we're
like to make a special message to Shane if he's out there. Shane, I like you. You're a good guy. I don't mean to try to make you sound like a complete moron, but at least back when I knew you, you just weren't very good at this tabletop thing.
at the least it sounded like you were fun as a player. Maybe not as a DM, but as a player, you sounded fun.
Yeah, and if the opportunity arose, I would definitely want to play with you again.
Yeah, we would. In honesty, I mean, if the story, especially if the story about the back totem is if things have improved, I mean, that'd be awesome. So Diopsid, is that everything, or we're gonna call this a wrap?
Oh, that's it. I have many other tales of many other people I've met over the years, but I feel that some of those deserve their own videos practically.
Oh, they will. They will.
Like one involving a certain Pokemon, isn't it?
Oh Lord.
Well, I was thinking of one, a certain limey British fellow who was a real piece of work.
I'm not
And I
gonna
don't
lie,
mean that
viewers.
in
I'm
using.
looking forward to that one.
Oh,
Anyway, I can feel I can feel certain biological processes kicking off, so I hope you don't mind if we cut this short. Next week, or actually this Saturday, we're gonna get the Orky thing finally going for once in our zogging lives.
Oh boy.
now you're gonna have a fucking heart attack because you're a fat ass, and then I have to put it off again. Fuck.
Honestly, knowing my luck, probably. Either that or Wraithethu. It depends on who we get and what we do. Also, it's nice to have you on here, Biggie. I'm sorry that I had to ding you on the audio, but you really need to get that thing fixed.
Well, no, I'm currently at the beach right now. I'm currently in my beach condo underground right now.
Okay, stop
It's
talking. Stop
really
talking.
great. It's really
Yeah,
nice.
you're too quiet. Anyway, I am literally about to die of explosions, so yeah, have a good night, everyone.
All right.
Ew.
Take care,
Yeah.
everybody.